Welcome back to the Neurodivergent Leadership Podcast, where we talk about effective communication and leadership, especially in the STEM workplace. I'm Jeremy Doran, and I love to accelerate people's transition from excellent individual contributor into excellent managers and finally into inspirational leaders. One of the things that I often talk about is the Pareto principle. It's commonly known as the 80-20 rule, which says that 80% of outputs come from 20% of inputs, or 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. A lot of times I use it as a way to encourage people to focus on their strengths and not necessarily their weaknesses, because improving something you're already good at is going to have a much greater effect on your productivity than marginally improving something that you're probably never going to be great at. You may get okay. When telling people to focus, I talk about the things they aren't good at and encourage them to eliminate, delegate, or automate those things so that they can focus on their strengths. And a lot of times it's true, but there are some things that as a leader you cannot ignore, whether it's a natural strength of yours or not. Two of my very strong tendencies are being introverted and being logical. And I'm not alone in this. In fact, there is a disproportionate percentage of engineers who have these very same tendencies. Each one can be challenging when transitioning into a management or leadership role. Combined, they're even more of a challenge. Of course, there are other dimensions as well, but these two tend to have the most direct effect on communicating with others. But as my mother would very often say, deal with it. Just because we don't want to do something or don't feel comfortable doing it doesn't mean that we can always just avoid it. Sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone. Whatever your profile results are, they're not absolutes. They are tendencies. My tendencies happen to be very strong, but it doesn't mean I can't be the opposite. It just takes conscious thought and effort. Within the tendencies of introversion and logic, as a manager, I'd prefer to handle all communication through email, and all decisions would be made using formulas inside of a spreadsheet. Talking to other people is tiring enough. Never mind if the topic is going to be something having to do with feelings or emotions. In fact, I know one manager whose tendency was so strong, there was only one person on the team that he would talk to. And when something needed to be shared with the rest of the team, he would ask her, "Will you please go talk to the humans, ... Was he brilliant? Absolutely. Was that exhibiting real leadership? I'm not so sure. The biggest complaints that employees at companies have about their managers are the unwillingness to engage, them not knowing anything about their employees, and not feeling seen and heard. Those are very consistent. And this is the case for bosses who are both introverted or extroverted and logical or emotional. If you, like me, tend to be introverted, you still need to go out and talk to your people in person, or if remote, at least on Zoom. Some communication can be through email, but it will not replace actual conversation. To make it easier, structure the conversation. Know what the topic is, know what outcome you want, and even write out some of the key points if you're afraid that you're going to forget them in the heat of the conversation. Having a hard stop helps. Knowing that there's a limited amount of time for this conversation helps make it easier. The more structure, the better, basically. And one thing, always be prepared with a relevant story. If that story never comes up, that's fine. But if things get awkward, it may just help move things along and make them easier. If you tend to be extroverted, that's great. Get out there and talk to your people. Just be careful. Don't interrupt them if they're in the middle of an important project. And don't make things take too long. Again, structure is really helpful. Figure out what the point of the conversation is and focus on that. Having a hard stop is still good advice because it's going to help you not to go over. And always have a couple of questions ready. It can be easy for extroverts to fill in silence with stories, but if you can get the other person to tell you stories, whether it's about work or their personal life, you'll get a lot more information and they will feel seen and heard. And I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm talking to managers about their employees feeling seen and heard, I see some eyes rolling. It's especially true of introverted, logical people like me. But once I share some of the research, the eyes stop rolling because employees who feel seen and heard are more engaged, they're more productive, and the company makes more money. That makes everyone happy. So having employees who feel seen and heard is not a nice to have, it's a productivity tool. Now, sometimes making people feel seen and heard requires emotions to be addressed. A great thing for thinking, logical people to remember is that emotional people also want the best result as much as you do. For them, adhering to the values that they hold and that the team hold are very important. So when you're engaging with employees, don't just state the facts of what happened. Talk about what it means and why it's important. That way you're addressing both the logical and the emotional side of the conversation. For the people who tend more towards feeling and emotions, when you're talking to a thinking logical person, remember that one of their core values is a precise and perfect solution to any problem. So bearing that in mind will remind you to address the core values, not just your core values, not just the core values of the company, but all of the core values, which are going to include logic and precision to get to the best possible solution. I find it pretty interesting that the advice for each side of the coin is so similar. For people who tend towards introversion or extroversion, having structure and being prepared with a story or a question that elicits a story is so helpful. For thinking or feeling people, recognizing that core values are important to both parties and need to be addressed in order to get on the same page. When we talk about flexing and learning to operate in a way that's uncomfortable or outside of your tendencies, it doesn't mean abandoning your strengths and your tendencies and completely flipping things around. It's more about understanding the other side of the coin. Respect it, engage it, find a common ground, and get at least somewhat comfortable being on that side of the dimension. That's what I have for today. I know that we've had 2 solo episodes in a row, which is unusual. Still working on the exact format of the show going forward. Next week is definitely going to be an interview, and it's going to be a good one. You'll like it. Of course, things are going to be fluid, so I'm interested in your feedback. What do you think? Send me an email, jdoran@neuroconversantleadership.com. Let me know what format you like. Let me know what other topics you'd like to hear, and any other feedback would be much appreciated. I look forward to hearing from you, and have a great week.